Imagine you are the British Steve Irwin, searching for your next crikey to find this absolute beaut. How do you respond? In the events of the Dinosaur Project, a British expedition team travels to the Congo to seek evidence of a dinosaur. Today we will be talking about the movie, as well as all of the dinosaurs featured in it, including this abomination. I'm Sore Loser, dinosaurs light up my day, and I'm going to brighten yours. If you want to skip straight into the analysis, then please click here. Otherwise, I hope you enjoy.
Our film opens with text saying that the following film was compiled from 100 hours of footage. It also mentions missing British cryptozoologists. And honestly, those teeth should be classified as cryptid. Our movie actually begins with a floating bag in a river being found, as we listen to a radio report about missing British explorers. We then see footage of Moko Mbembe, sorry if I butchered that, which is a mythical water-dwelling entity that is believed to exist in the Congo River Basin. We are shown pictures of a plesiosaur, which we will get into later, and we know that the amount of sightings has promoted a team of cryptozoologists, the same team who went and found the Tasmanian tiger, to go searching for it. And cryptozoology is the study of animals that are legendary or may not exist, and the goal is to determine if they are real. So we meet this guy, and I know he's British, but we're going to call him Steve Irwin. Steve says that he is a scientist with an open mind and mentions being equipped with state-of-the-art cameras. And hey, you're not tricking anybody. I was around in 2012. These things were not state-of-the-art. We then switch to a young man with an aggressive 2012 hairstyle. He is going through a bag when Steve Irwin comes in on the phone, and we find out that that's Steve Irwin's son. How fun for that kid. We find out that that's not the case when Steve gets mad that his son has to go with him, which I don't understand, because if my dad was Steve and he said I gotta go to the Congo, I'd be fucking lit. Like, that shit would be awesome. They then have a bit of a talk about how his son got expelled from school because he posted a video of his principal in lingerie, which, I mean, he did everyone a favor. That's fucking weird. We then cut to the airport where we meet Liz Draper, and we're gonna call her Liz Drip. She recently graduated from nursing school and will be the team's medic. We get some creep shots of her, and then we cut to the inside of an airplane, and then Africa. We next meet Pete and Dave from the camera crew. Now, Dave shows unrestrained disdain for Pete the whole movie, and you'll actually find that nobody really likes each other in this entire film. It's kind of wild. Inside the hotel room, Joshua tells his dad about these cool GoPros that he's got, and that they can stick to anything. His dad does not think this is cool, as they get into a fight about him not coming along. His dad then literally says, "Yup, see you in a couple weeks, lol," and then just fucking dips out. We next see the crew setting up in an African village, and we meet Amora and the pilot Itchy. I think that was his name, we're just gonna roll with it, of the African Conservation Agency. And this guy is Charlie Rutherford. He is Steve Irwin's right-hand man, who goes on to openly and loudly complain about how he gets no recognition for helping or even being there. We're now going to refer to him as Complainerton. I say cry about it or do something. So the chopper takes off, and we get some wide sweeping shots of the Congo while Steve talks about Mbembe. He shows the difference between a plesiosaur and a pterosaur. Complainerton tells Amora that the plesiosaur is relatively harmless, while the other one is not, which is theorized to be true. Good job, movie. Gold sticker for you. Steve then goes on to say that Mbembe could be descended from either of these two animals. Amora just looks at him and laughs and tells him that they're just legends, which, I mean, why the hell did you come along if you're just gonna be a straight up hater? We then cut again to Josh, who is sitting in the cargo compartment of the helicopter. And how did he get in there? Was he hiding in a box? The camera did zoom in on a bag earlier, but it was not Josh-shaped, so I don't know how he got in there. While Josh talks to his camera, he ends up knocking over a box, which causes his dad to investigate. He gets found, and then his dad literally bitches him out in front of everyone, including the camera crew. I swear, Steve treats his offspring like it's a bad dog or something. I was half expecting him to pull out a rolled up newspaper and beat his son to death with it. Steve then tells the pilot to turn around, but they are past the point of no return now, and Complainerton tells Steve to actually cut his son some slack, but Steve just straight up tells him no. Josh then spots something outside the window. Amora sees it too and tries to get the captain's attention before we see what it is. A group of what I think are Pteranodon longiceps fly close, and this is our first pterosaur in the movie. Now, I think these are Pteranodon longiceps because they are large, they lack teeth from what we can see, and they have bony crests on their skulls. And we know that pteranodons are a genus of pterosaur that included some of the largest known flying reptiles, with P. longiceps having a wingspan of over 6 meters or 20 feet. As these creatures seem rather large, I believe that it is longiceps specifically. Now, these pterosaurs lived about 85 million years ago during the late Cretaceous geological period and are considered to be the most famous pterosaur. We're going to talk more about them later. Anyway, them being so large and majestic, they fly too close to investigate and one gets sucked up into the rotor. The helicopter then goes down, and the group wakes up and rushes out after they see that there is a fuel line leaking. Josh foolishly goes back to grab a camera before they make it a short distance away, and the copter explodes. Rip Pilot Itchy. The black guy always goes first. Also, check out this cameraman's stance. What a fucking dad pose. Anyway, Josh then gets bitched at again by Steve, and they head out towards a nearby village. They hear spooky noises along the way, and they pick up the pace. Making it to the village, which is only like 3 huts, they find it abandoned and in a state of disarray. Amora is then seen next to a wooden cage with blood in it, and when questioned about this, she says it's nothing and everything's fine. Which, yeah, okay. And then the camera guy doesn't even bother pressing the issue. I don't like these people. The group then looks inside one of the huts and sees a large amount of blood in there. And with the sun going down, they decide to stay in one of the other non-bloody huts for the night. Josh takes his time to set up his GoPro and show off that it has motion-activated night vision mode. Once inside, they discuss their options of rescue, and Josh is given a sat phone which is now broken and straight up told to fix it. For motivation, his dad gives him a scowl. I cannot stress to you enough how much his dad does not like his son in this movie. The group then goes to sleep, but wakes up in the night due to noises that can be heard outside. Josh then uses his GoPro to see what I think are Anurognathus ammoni. Now, these were small pterosaurs that existed in the late Jurassic period. Anurognathus had a short head with pin-like teeth for catching insects. It was considered to be a slower flying predator, specialized in hunting by maneuverability over speed. It apparently had large eyes that were adapted to a crepuscular way of life, or active during the twilight hours. And though the studio exaggerates greatly here, because the estimated wingspan is 50 centimeters or 20 inches, with an overall 9 centimeter long body, including the skull. So, I mean, we're not exactly seeing that here, but I'm confident that this is what the studio is trying to emulate. Once again, dinosaurs are being exaggerated and defamed in my movies. We gotta rise up. One of the Apatosaurs, and yes, I'm gonna call them that, breaks in and panic starts in the group. Liz Drip gets scratched in the face and they all panic and run outside. They are chased down by the Apatosaurs and Liz gets taken down. The group leaves her ass there and heads towards a nearby river. They then find a boat and everyone gets in. Steve narrowly avoids becoming a snack and they push off down the river. And the Apatosaurs do not follow past the bank, which I don't know why. They can definitely fly. Just plot. Don't look at it. Don't look at it. The next morning, they are still floating downriver, and for some reason, there's a second boat. I looked in the first scene to see if I could see that, and I didn't, so we're just going to go with it. Josh takes this time to give his account of events to the camera, and also said that his dad sucks, which is totally deserved. The two sorta have a bonding moment when the group spots something. Looks like some theropods. And then something bumps the boats, spooking everybody. Steve then goes on to say it's just an eddy, which like, bruh, there are dinosaurs around, somebody got eaten from your group, and you're literally just gonna chalk this up to an eddy? You're Another bump has the group paddling fast as a hole appears in their boat. They make it to shore and are able to calm down and fix their boats and end up finding a camp for the night. They set up tents, and then Josh pulls out some dinosaur playing cards, which I swear I used to have something similar to those as a kid. While around the fire, they hear obvious dinosaur noises, but chalk it up to a literal leopard, which they're just asking to be eaten at this point. They suck so bad. Amora clues in the group that they might be seeing these animals because of the deforestation in the area.
And while she's talking about that, we see a Lastley diagnosticus pop out of the bushes. Now, Lastley is a monospecific genus of ornithischian dinosaur that lived during the early Jurassic. They were lightly built bipedal animals that varied between 3.3 and 6.6 feet long. They lived about 176 to 201 million years ago, and it was one of the earliest ornithischians. Now, we're also going to see a vital sin committed here, and yes, it's going to make me upset, and it'll probably make you upset as well. More about them later.
Everyone is rather startled, but never really seems alarmed by this, and we see 2 more near the river. Steve correctly calls this Lastley, which, good job, Steve. And then Josh literally tries to feed one candy like a Chad, and now he's very close to taming it. We just have to wait on that timer now, when it reacts and shows its frills. The dino quickly succumbs to the smell of Skittles and eats the candy from Josh. And then just as quickly as they came, all 3 dinos leave. The group is able to go to sleep except for Chris, who just has a Joker moment and stares into the camera all night. In the morning, Amora tells Steve that they need to leave, while Josh plays with his now tamed dino that he is calling Crypto. Obviously, he's calling it Crypto for cryptozoologists, but I like to think it's for Bitcoin because in 2012 they hit a high of $13.51, baby. Yeah, instead of being 11, I should have been buying Bitcoin. Josh puts a GoPro on Crypto, and we get the earliest version of those cat journey GoPro TikTok videos. This film was really ahead of its time. Now, Crypto and his homies go downriver and into a cave where the camera loses connection briefly. Chris gets mad at this, and the group starts fighting about whether to leave or follow Crypto. Josh and his dad divide further as they each want to do different things, and eventually the group jumps back into their boats and floats towards salvation. The connection is reestablished, and Crypto eventually loses his camera, where we see the feet of a larger theropod. Chris and Josh decide to hide this fact from Steve, because fuck him. The group attempts to navigate through some white water, and the 2 boats get separated. Josh and Chris enter in the same cavern that Crypto did, and on the other boat, the cameraman and Amora want to leave the 2 behind, but Steve actually does the bare minimum as a father and decides to go back for his son. Chris and Josh exit the cavern and are stunned by their location. They then determine that the water is very deep, and in a shockingly tense scene, they use their hands to paddle ashore when the other group starts to catch up to them. The 2 boats celebrate reuniting when something bumps the boat again. They start frantically paddling as something big can be heard underneath the waves. Suddenly, a head pops out of the water, and we see Mbembe in the beautiful flesh. And I know this movie said this was a plesiosaur, and I guess they're not technically wrong, but this thing is way too big for that. This must be the Elasmosaurus. And honestly, look at this shot. The dinosaurs in this movie still look pretty good. Now, Elasmosaurus is a genus of plesiosaur that lived in North America during the late Cretaceous period, about 80.5 million years ago. Elasmosaurus measured about 10.3 or 34 feet in length, and the neck alone was around 7.1 meters or 23 feet long. It was one of the longest necked animals to have lived, with the second largest number of neck vertebrae known. And now, contrary to earlier depictions of when their skeletal remains were first found, their necks are considered not very flexible today, and it could not be held high above the water surface. We're gonna have to talk about that later. Mbembe makes a great loud growling noise as the cameraman approaches, when suddenly another dino jumps out of the water, jump scares me, and eats the cameraman. Now, it kind of looks like a Pliosaurus or a Leopleurodon, and I wanted to go specifically with the Pliosaurus funke. Now, most European species of Pliosaurus measured around 8 meters or 26 feet long and weighed about 5 metric tons. Estimates of the skull length are approximately 1.6 to 2 meters or 5.2 to 6.6 feet long, making the species P. funke one of the largest pliosaurs described so far. It supposedly had a bite force 4 times as powerful as the Tyrannosaurus rex, and they would have lived roughly 150 million years ago. We're going to talk more about them later. So, everyone falls into the water as the boat is capsized. Blood fills the screen as this mystery predator eats somebody else. Chris and Josh are able to make it shore, and no one else is seen alive. They head further inland to try and get to safety, and Chris tells Josh to get this sat phone working as they keep pushing on, which he does surprisingly quick, and then Chris jump scares him with his goofy ass face. Josh then hands Chris the sat phone, and Chris's acting starts dramatically decreasing. This causes Chris in a fit of rage at his acting prowess to push Josh down a big hole, presumably to keep this dinosaur discovery all to himself. This causes Josh to almost drown, but make it outside once again. He also feels the need to tell the camera exactly what we just saw for the next 3 to 5 minutes. We then cut to Amora and Pete and Steve. They all made it out. Yay. You would think that they would be glad about this fact, but they start fighting about whether to leave again or not. Amora can't take the pressure anymore and decides that she wants to leave, while the others decide to look for Josh. While this is happening, we cut yet again back to Josh as he is reunited with Crypto, but they soon run into more Apatosaurs and have to run for it. They corner Josh, and then this mega homie Pete comes out of nowhere with a stick to show these dinosaurs, pterosaurs really, who's got the bigger hypothalamus. He is such a Chad that he chases the whole group into the woods and beats their asses until he gets jumped by way too many of them at once to handle. Godspeed, Pete, you will be remembered. We're then back with Steve and Josh as his son tells on Chris about the aforementioned murder and bad acting. They ponder this a moment before a rock slide knocks Steve off the edge of this cliff, and Chris is seen as the cause of it. Steve has to let go and says, "I love you," for the first time ever. Wow, great, good job. Josh then hides as Chris tries to find and murder him, in which he eventually corners Josh and is able to give him this spiel about how he's the best in the world and a professional. Crypto then suddenly spits on Josh, covering him in his scent. And here we see Mommy and Daddy Lastley. They take just 1 second to take care of Chris. Josh flees into the forest and shows us more pterodons and some distant sauropods. Josh then tells the camera that he's strapping this footage to his backpack and throwing it in the river as a message in a bottle. We then see this bag floating in the intro again as the radio host now talks about hard drive retrieval.
Now, overall, it was a pretty good movie. I had a good time watching it. I know there were some inaccuracies in it, if we're being nice here. But I did just want to point out the name of the movie is the Dinosaur Project. That's actually what they called the project themselves inside of the movie earlier, as you can see by the t-shirt. But, you know, they were not actually going to find a dinosaur. They very quickly confirmed that they were looking for what they thought was a plesiosaur, which is a marine reptile.
Okay, I just wanted to point that out. On to the analysis. Now, I've separated these animals into two groups, the late Cretaceous group and the Jurassic group, as they would have lived respectively in these time periods.
Now, I did want to point out that in the movie, we see two adult Lastley, and they are huge. Definitely well beyond the size of your normal Lastley. What I think happened is the studio tried to apply evolution to only Lastley in this movie, as seen by its frills, and the size of the adult creatures. I really wish they would have applied some of that to the other animals in the movie, but, you know, you take what you can take and complain about the rest, right?
Now, starting with our Cretaceous group, we've got Pteranodon longiceps. Now, like I said in the movie, Pteranodon longiceps would have had a wingspan of over 6 meters or 20 feet. They lived during the late Cretaceous geological period, about 84.5 to 86 million years ago, specifically. Now, more fossil specimens of Pteranodon have been found than any other pterosaur in the world, and Pteranodon is also considered the most famous pterosaur. Yay! They are frequently featured in dinosaur media and are strongly associated with dinosaurs by the general public, despite being pterosaurs. And specifically for Pteranodon, their skulls were different in North American pterosaurs because they lacked any teeth and had bony crests on their skulls, unlike their European counterparts. Now, their name, Pteranodon longiceps, the pteron part means wing, and the anodon means toothless, for a toothless wing. They lived in North America, which would be in present-day Kansas, Nebraska, Wyoming, South Dakota, and Alabama. As for their skeletal remains, we have found about 1,200 specimens. Many of them are very well preserved, and we have nearly complete skulls. Pteranodon was the first pterosaur found outside of Europe in the Cretaceous Smoky Hill chalk deposits of western Kansas, and they were deposited at the bottom of what was once known as the Western Interior Seaway. And what the Western Interior Seaway was basically a large inland sea that split the continent of North America into two land masses for 34 million years. Now, it is illegal to talk about pterosaurs and not talk about how they would have flown. The wing shape of Pteranodon suggests that it would have flown rather like a modern-day albatross. This is based off the fact that Pteranodon had a high aspect ratio. And while most of Pteranodon flight would have depended on soaring, like long-winged seabirds, it probably required an occasional active, rapid burst of flapping. There is also speculation to say that Pteranodon longiceps would have utilized thermal soaring as a form of flight. And this is where birds today, and supposedly pterosaurs back then, and other flying creatures, would have used convection currents to stay in the air without having to flap their wings. And, like other pterosaurs, Pteranodon probably took off from a standing quadrupedal position. Using their long forearms for leverage, they would have vaulted themselves into the air in a rapid leap. Now, numerous studies have been conducted on how they would have hunted, and the most recent one seems to be that the head, neck, and shoulders of Pteranodon were heavily built as diving birds, and models suggest that they could dive by folding back their wings like a modern gannet. Socially, Pteranodon lived primarily on offshore rookeries, where they could nest away from land-based predators and feed far from the shore. The fact that females appear to have outnumbered males 2 to 1 suggests that, as with modern animals with size-related sexual dimorphism, such as sea lions and other pinnipeds, Pteranodon might have been polygynous, with a few males competing for association with groups consisting of a large number of females. Adult Pteranodon species may have divided into 2 distinct size classes, small and large, with both size classes living alongside each other. And lastly, the fact that the crests vary so much on the top of their head mostly rules out practical functions other than use in mating displays. If they had served another uniform function, there would probably be a lot more evidence for the fact that they would be very similar between individuals. Next up with our late Cretaceous pals, we've got Elasmosaurus platyurus. And, like I said in the summary, Elasmosaurus is a genus of plesiosaur that lived in North America during the Cambrian stage of the late Cretaceous period, about 80.5 million years ago. They were about 34 feet or 10.3 meters in length, and Elasmosaurus would have had a streamlined body with paddle-like limbs, a short tail, a small head, and an extremely long neck. Elasmosaurids were fully adapted to life in the ocean, and their streamlined bodies and long paddles indicated that they were active swimmers. Now, in the movie, we see Mbembe sticking his head way up above the waterline, and Mbembe is huge. Now, it is fair for you to say that this could just be an evolved, rather large specimen of Plesiosaurus. I do not think so. It is way too large compared to those humans. I believe this is Elasmosaurus. They just wanted to make him look nice and scary, but I think he's cute. Now, Elasmosaurus means thin-plated reptile, and Platyurus means flat-tailed. Elasmosaurus is known from the Sharon Springs member of the Campanian Age Upper Cretaceous Pierre Shale formation of western Kansas. The Pierre Shale represents a period of marine deposition from the western interior seaway, so we see that again. At its largest, the western interior seaway stretched from the Rockies east to the Appalachians, some 1,000 kilometers or 620 miles. And fun fact, at its deepest, it may have only been 800 or 900 or 2,600 or 30,000 feet deep. Not too bad. Now, for its skeleton, unfortunately, we only have one incomplete Elasmosaurus skeleton, which is definitely known, consisting of a fragmentary skull, the spine, the pectoral and pelvic girdles. Now, a lot of speculation has occurred on its hunting habits, and the most recent of them have been that the flexon ranges of Elasmosaurus's neck would have allowed the animal to employ a number of hunting methods. These include benthic grazing, which would have involved swimming close to the bottom and using the head and neck to dig for prey on the seafloor. Elasmosaurids may have also been active hunters in the pelagic zone, retracting their necks to launch a strike or using side swipe motions to stun or kill prey with their laterally projected teeth. It has also been suggested that the predatory abilities of Elasmosaurids may have been underestimated. It is quite possible that Elasmosaurus and its kin stalked schools of fish, concealing themselves below and moving their heads slowly up as they approached. We think this because the eyes of this animal were placed at the top of the head and allowed them to see directly upward. This stereoscopic vision would have helped it find small prey, and hunting from below would have also been possible with its prey silhouetted in the sunlight while it was concealed in the dark waters below. Now, it's known that the paddles of plesiosaurs were so rigid and specialized for swimming that they could not have come on land to lay eggs like sea turtles. Therefore, they probably gave live birth to their young like some species of sea snakes. And evidence for this live birth in plesiosaurs is provided by a specimen of an adult polycotylu with a single fetus inside of it. It is not known if they have hunted in packs, but the relative brain size to skull ratio seems to be typical for reptiles. And that's it for our late Cretaceous friends. We are moving on to our Jurassic homies, and we are going to start out with Lastlothosaurus diagnosticus. Now, Lastlothosaurus was a genus of ornithischian dinosaur that lived during the early Jurassic period, specifically about 190 to 199.5 million years ago. And we know that they were fast runners and that, like all ornithischians, the tip of Lastlothosaurus's upper jaw and lower jaws were horny, forming a beak-like structure. Now, its full name means distinguished lizard from Lesotho. It would have lived in what is now South Africa and Lesotho. As for its skeleton, Lesothosaurus is one of the most completely known early ornithischians, based on numerous skulls and postcranial fossils from the Upper Elliott Formation. It is theorized to be an herbivorous or slightly omnivorous creature. It had a simpler tooth and jaw anatomy than later ornithischians, and studies of tooth wear have shown that much less abrasion on the teeth would have been expected of a plant eater feeding on mainly tough, arid climate plants. And also concluded that Lesothosaurus was probably an opportunistic omnivore, like I mentioned, feeding primarily on small animals during seasons when softer plants were not available. Socially, a bone bed of Lesothosaurus described in 2016 includes material from 3 large individuals. This association suggests that this early ornithischian dinosaur may have lived in groups, or they just found this bone bed in a dinosaur type trap. And when I say dinosaur trap, I mean predator trap, which is a natural hazard where prey animals become trapped or incapacitated, and the attracted predators suffer the same fate. Now, this can happen for a bunch of different reasons, but hopefully not to these Lesothosaurus. I would like for them to live in groups. Alright, moving on, we have Anurognathus amoni. Now, as I described, you know that they're a small pterosaur from the late Jurassic period. Around 148.5 to 150 million years ago, you probably would have seen these guys flying around catching insects during the twilight hours. With their pin-like teeth and small bodies, they focused on maneuverability instead of speed while hunting. Their name, Anurognathus, means frog jaw. Anurognathus amoni is theorized to live what is in now Germany, and they were found in the Altmühltal Formation. I'm so sorry if I butchered that. As for its skeleton, we have found 2 specimens, with one of them consisting of a mostly crushed, relatively complete skeleton on a slab, and the other one with the counter slab that it was found on missing. Most of the skeleton is only visible on that one via impression. Not a lot to go on. It is speculated that they probably specialized in flying lower to the ground underneath trees and other foliage. It is unknown how they would have lived socially, however, a couple different theories have come out. It is unconfirmed if they would have performed any roosting action like modern-day bats, but best bet for how they communicated and lived with each other is how bats group up and fly around into the night looking for food. Although it is not known if they would have lived in dark areas like caves or hides. And finally, we get to my favorite on this list, the Plesiosaurus funki. Now, Plesiosaurus funki is one of the larger species of Plesiosaurus that they have found, with an estimated body length of 33 to 39 feet. They probably would have utilized their size to go after larger prey. And when Plesiosaurus funki was found, they dubbed it Predator X before they fully uncovered exactly what they were digging for, and this took the media by storm when they got a hold of it. Now, Plesiosaurus means more lizard. As for its location, it would have prowled the seas around what is now Norway, and it was found in the Svalbard archipelago of Norway. Now, P. funki is known from 2 partial skeletons. The first one is represented by anterior portions of the upper and lower jaw, including the premaxillary and dentary teeth, numerous rib fragments, and gastralia, and a complete right forelimb. It is theorized that their diet would have included fish, cephalopods, and other marine reptiles. Analysis of bones from the 4 flippers suggests that the animals cruised using only their 4 flippers and using the back flippers for extra speed when pursuing and capturing its prey. And it is suggested that Predator X's brain was probably of similar type and size proportionally to that of today's great white sharks, and they probably behaved a lot like great whites did. I do want to say that Plesiosaurus in general are very cool. While I did some time in the Navy, I got to do a swim call out in the middle of the ocean, and when I first got in there, for some reason I wasn't afraid of any actual sharks, but Plesiosaurus came to my mind when I was in the ocean, and I think I felt genuine fear. And that is it for today's video. I'm sorry if my voice sounded kind of lethargic during this video. I've recently come down kind of sick. I'm getting over it now, but I really appreciate everyone who's watching these videos. I really like talking about dinosaurs passionately, and it really makes me excited that other people share in that as well. Leave a comment down below if you have a suggestion for anything else you'd like me to cover, and I will see you in the next one. Goodbye and happy holidays.